Today I am going to tell you a surprising jailbreak story in which this prisoner escaped not once, not twice, but 4 times, all within just 5 years. He carried out each jailbreak so cleanly and cleverly that every time he managed to get away as if by magic, and the method he used the 4th time was even more astonishing and dangerous than the previous 3. It stunned everyone from the jailers to the entire police department. So who was this prisoner? How did he manage to escape every time? And was he ever caught by the police? You will be amazed to know this is the story of Stephen J. Russell. In the 1990s he worked as an accountant at a company. At that time Stephen had no criminal record, and he was living a very quiet, ordinary life. One morning while he was working at his desk, something happened that turned Stephen's life in a direction that made him the most wanted fugitive in all of Texas. One morning, as usual, Stephen was sitting at his desk working when his manager came to him and told him that the company had decided to fire him. Stephen asked his manager why they were firing him, but the manager did not give any reason and told him not to come to the office from tomorrow. Stephen had always worked hard and honestly, so being fired made him very angry and disappointed. That event affected him so deeply that his outlook on life changed completely. He went from being a decent person to someone filled only with anger and hatred. The growing bitterness in him pushed his life onto a path that changed everything forever. Because Stephen was quite intelligent and very good at dealing with people, he decided he would become a con artist and live by cheating people. Stephen began his frauds with an insurance company, where he took accidental insurance and then faked accidents to claim insurance money. In 1992, during one such fake accident operation, he was exposed and the insurance company handed him over to the police. After being arrested, Stephen was sentenced to 6 months in prison for this fraud. But Stephen had already decided he would not serve his sentence. After spending 1 month in jail, he began planning an escape. While planning, Stephen closely watched the guards and the workers who came into the jail from outside. During this time, one thing caught his attention. He noticed that the workers who came from outside to do repair work were let out at the gate without being thoroughly checked. The guard would just rattle the window and let them pass. The only visible difference between those workers and the prisoners was their clothing. The workers wore civilian clothes and carried walkie-talkies while the prisoners wore their jail uniforms. These were the workers the jail authority often called in for repairs inside the jail. After finishing the work, they would leave and return outside. Stephen realized this was the way he could escape from the jail, and then he executed a very cunning and astonishing plan. Stephen bribed one of the workers who came into the jail to arrange civilian clothes and a walkie-talkie for him. A few days later, when some workers came to do repair work inside the jail, Stephen put on the civilian clothes, took the walkie-talkie in hand and blended in with those workers. To avoid suspicion, he even started working with them and pretended to talk on the walkie-talkie. When they all left together, he went out with them and thus carried out his first jailbreak. After this jailbreak, Stephen went to Florida, and from 1992 to 1994 he lived there under a false name. But fate had other plans. He was arrested again for insurance check fraud. During the trial, the court also found out that Stephen was living there under an assumed name and that he was an escaped prisoner, so he was sent back to a Texas jail. Stephen thought that if he escaped again he would be caught, so this time he decided to serve his sentence. Since Stephen's sentence was less than a year, he completed his sentence and was released. He got a job at a department store. After a few days, Stephen realized he was not cut out for small jobs. He wanted a very luxurious and lavish life. He understood that petty frauds would not get him far, so he decided to carry out a big fraud this time that would change his life financially forever. There was an advertisement in Finance Express saying that a famous health insurance company needed a finance manager. Although Stephen had no identity or work experience, these things did not stop him from trying for the job. He first had fake degrees made, and then prepared a resume claiming qualifications, degrees, and previous work experience. Stephen knew that just degrees and work experience on paper would not be enough. He needed finance knowledge and experience, so he started reading the Wall Street Journal newspaper and some financial management books. Since Stephen had previously been an accountant and was very intelligent, he quickly understood the nuances of finance and was fully prepared for the interview. During the interview, the people were impressed by Stephen's qualifications, work experience, and the answers he gave. They thought he was a perfect candidate for the job. But before hiring anyone, The company followed a process to check the candidate's previous companies and take feedback. Stephen cleverly bypassed this step. During the interview, they asked Stephen for the names and phone numbers of his previous employers, so they could verify his work and performance. Stephen gave them 3 different numbers, but surprisingly, those 3 numbers were all call forwarded to him. The very next day, calls came to those 3 numbers for feedback, and each time Stephen answered in a different voice, tone, and accent. On each call, he gave glowing feedback about himself, saying Stephen was an intelligent and hard-working employee, and convinced the interviewers to hire him. They had no idea that on the other end of the calls it was the same man, not a finance manager but an escaped prisoner. 2 days after the interview, Stephen received the appointment letter and joined the insurance company as a finance manager. Now Stephen held a powerful and influential position at this insurance company, and he began preparing to carry out his fraud. But a small mistake ruined his plan. To reduce his home loan amount and interest, he refinanced using a large sum taken from the insurance company to pay off a large portion of his home loan. A bank employee became suspicious about where he got such a large sum, and when an investigation traced the money, it was found to have come from that health insurance company where Stephen worked. When the insurance company's CEO and board learned of this, they asked their accounts team to check all transactions. They discovered the fraudulent transactions Stephen had committed. The news spread through the company and the whole town, and Stephen realized he might be caught at any time. He withdrew $40,000 from different ATMs before all his accounts were frozen. But during all this, he made a foolish mistake that led to his 3rd arrest. Since Stephen planned to leave town, he decided to first retrieve his valuable items from the home safe. He was completely unaware that the police were already waiting for him there, and as soon as he reached his house door, the police arrested him. After this arrest, the court set his bail at 50. This amount was so high that Stephen could not arrange it by any means, but he did not give up and decided he would break out of this jail. After spending 2 months in jail, he began planning his escape again. One morning, he used the jail phone to call the jail records office and spoke to a female employee, pretending to be Judge Charles Ham, the same judge who had set Stephen's bail so high. Changing his voice on the phone, Stephen told the female employee that Judge Charles Ham wanted to reduce Stephen J. Russell's bail from $50,000 because it was reduced during a private hearing and they should modify the record. At first, the female employee had some doubts, but when Stephen, posing as the judge, gave confidential and tiny details about the case, she became convinced it was really Judge Charles Ham on the phone, and modified the records to change his bail from $50,000. Because all of Stephen's bank accounts had already been frozen, he needed to arrange $45,000 quickly to be released on bail. Stephen was constantly worried that if anyone suspected that phone call, his whole plan would fail, and so he decided to take help from a prisoner finance company. A prisoner finance company is a company that helps inmates. A prisoner finance company lends money to pay fines and bail amounts. Although Stephen was not eligible for a loan according to the finance company's terms and conditions, he still somehow convinced the finance company to pay his bail amount, and thus by his cunning he once again managed to escape from jail. By now Stephen had carried out 3 frauds, and had already escaped from jail once, so the police put his phone under surveillance as soon as he got bail. Although he left the city as soon as he was bailed out, the phone surveillance gave the police his location. The police heard him on the phone saying to someone that he was staying at a hotel in Florida, on Palm Beach, and from there the police arrested him for the 4th time. After that, the court sentenced him to 40 years for insurance company fraud and fleeing the city. While the sentence was being pronounced, Stephen had already decided that he would break out of this jail too, but this time he was sent to a different prison to serve his sentence, and the security there was much tighter than the previous jail. The jailers and guards were informed that Stephen had escaped twice before, and they kept a very close watch on him. The jailers and guards were sure that Stephen could not escape from this prison because the security was so tight. Meanwhile, Stephen began planning a new escape, and during this time his attention fell on the prison's doctor wing. This was the wing where a team of doctors treated the inmates. All these doctors wore green aprons, and from this Stephen got the idea that finally let him escape from this jail. He thought that if he could somehow make his clothes green as well, he could join the doctor's team and get out of the prison. To do this, he bribed a guard and got a green dye. Because Stephen had 2 sets of uniforms, one day while doing laundry he dyed one of his uniforms the exact shade of green that matched the doctor's aprons. Now Stephen waited for the right time and the right opportunity to escape from this prison. On the morning of December 13th, he first put on the green uniform and then wore the prison uniform over it. After wearing the uniform, he went to a quiet, deserted area of the prison and hid his prison uniform there. Now on his body he wore the green-dyed uniform that looked exactly like the doctor's apron. During his sentence, Stephen had examined this prison very closely, so he knew every inch of it, and he also knew that most of the female guards on the morning shift spent their time talking on the phone without paying attention to what was happening around them. Taking advantage of this, Stephen went near the guard cabin and through the glass, showed his hand to a female guard and asked her to open the door. Because the uniform he wore looked exactly like a doctor's apron, and the female guard was on the phone, she did not pay attention, and believing him pressed the switch to open the door from her cabin. After that, Stephen opened the door and escaped from that prison for the third time. Stephen wanted to get far away from that prison as quickly as possible, because the jailers and guards might realize he had escaped at any time. So he stopped a passing car with a hand signal and told the owner that he was a doctor who worked in the prison, but because the car owner had drunk too much alcohol, his car had broken down and he did not want the prison authorities to know about it. He asked the car owner to give him a lift to another city where his home was. Coincidentally, the car owner was indeed going to another city and agreed to give Stephen a lift. In this way, Stephen reached a very distant city. After reaching the other city, Stephen stopped a taxi and told the taxi driver that he was a surgeon at the Houston Medical Center and that he had an emergency case to handle and needed to be taken there immediately. He asked the taxi driver to hurry. After reaching the medical center, Stephen told the taxi driver that he would bring money from his locker and asked him to wait. The taxi driver waited, but Stephen never returned, and thus Stephen successfully escaped from jail for the third time. After Stephen's third escape, the Texas Prison Authority felt insulted because despite such high security they had failed to stop a prisoner from escaping, and so they appointed a special agent named Terry Capps, the leader of a special operations unit who worked for the jail authority. Terry knew very well that Stephen was extremely clever and cunning and would not be easy to catch, so he formed a special task force whose sole job was to catch Stephen. The special task force began searching for Stephen from Haynesville, Texas, where the prison from which Stephen had escaped was located, but since Stephen had already left for Houston, the task force found nothing there. After spending some time in Houston, Stephen went to the city of Biloxi, Mississippi, where he wanted to gamble and earn some money. Meanwhile, Terry and his team were working day and night to find Stephen, and then they identified a person who had been in contact with Stephen in recent days. On questioning that person, Terry found out that Stephen was in Biloxi, Mississippi, and he immediately contacted the Biloxi sheriff and faxed him Stephen's photos. Just 2 days after the photos were faxed, Stephen fell into the sheriff's hands, and the most surprising thing was that the sheriff had encountered Stephen by chance at a market. As soon as the sheriff saw him, he became suspicious, and when he compared the man with the faxed photos, he immediately arrested him. In this way, Stephen was caught by the police for the 5th time. Call it Stephen's bad luck or stupidity that he was so easily caught by the very officers he had been evading, and the sheriff he ran into was actually looking for him with those photos. After the arrest, Stephen was sent back to a Texas prison to serve his sentence, but this time 5 more years were added to his sentence, making it 45 years. At the time of sentencing, the court also said that Stephen could get bail only after serving at least 11 years of his sentence. But Stephen then adopted a shocking and unusual escape plan that shook the entire Texas Prison Authority and its jailers. Having faced so many court trials, Stephen knew all the conditions for getting bail very well, and then he noticed a loophole that could get him out on bail. But the method of using that loophole was so dangerous that Stephen's life could have been at risk. The court rule was that if an inmate developed a very serious illness while serving his sentence, he could be released on bail, and Stephen abused this rule. To get bail, Stephen decided that he would convince the court and prison authority that he had AIDS, so that he could be easily released on bail. But this was a difficult task that required very detailed planning. To carry out this plan, Stephen began to fast, which caused his weight to drop rapidly, and made him look like a sick patient. Along with losing weight, he often pretended to vomit so that people would believe his illness was worse. Stephen also bribed one doctor from the prison medical team to side with him and create a fake medical report saying that he had AIDS. Now, with Stephen's deteriorating condition and that doctor's report, the prison authority became convinced that he had AIDS, and he began to spend his days resting in bed in his cell. In this way, he spent months lying in bed. The most surprising thing was that during those 8 months, no other doctor had him retested. All the other doctors fully agreed with the first doctor's medical report. Stephen emphasized that the prison authority and the court should believe that he might die at any moment, and that he should be released on parole and admitted to a hospital where he could receive treatment. Meanwhile, Stephen took an even more risky and dangerous step to make his condition appear more serious. Stephen started collecting the sleeping pills that were given to him every day, and when he had gathered a large number of them, he swallowed them all at once. Because of this drug overdose, Stephen's condition became very serious, and he went into a coma for 4 days. After this incident, the jail authorities and other doctors were convinced that Stephen could die at any moment, so they released him on parole and admitted him to a hospital in Kennedy, Texas for treatment. After arriving at the hospital, Stephen's treatment began, but during this time he decided that now he would permanently escape the police and the law. For this, the path Stephen chose was to fake his own death. Stephen knew that if he could somehow prove himself dead, the police and the law would stop looking for him. So once again he played a shocking trick. One day, Stephen called the jail authorities from the hospital and introduced himself as a doctor named Adam Roos. He told them that he was a specialist AIDS doctor and that he had an experimental treatment that he wanted to try on a patient. He asked the jail authorities to hand over to him any prisoners suffering from AIDS for the experiment. The jail authorities also thought that Stephen was going to die anyway, and maybe this experimental treatment could save him, so they took court approval and prepared to hand Stephen over to Dr. Adam. The jail authorities had no idea that on the other end of the phone there was no doctor, but Stephen himself. Meanwhile, Stephen called one of his old partners from the hospital and told him to prepare a fake death certificate in his name, signed by Dr. Adam Roos. He also told his partner to come to the hospital to take him away, so he could tell the jail authorities that he was going with his relative to Dr. Adam Roos. Just 2 days after leaving the hospital, Stephen sent his death certificate by courier to the hospital, jail authority and court. This convinced everyone that Stephen was dead, and all cases against him were closed. Because the courier came under the name of Dr. Adam Roos, everyone believed that Stephen had died during experimental treatment. Now even the police stopped searching for him, and in this way he managed to escape from prison for the 4th time. A few weeks later, Stephen's health improved, and he regained the weight he had lost in jail, but unable to give up his habit of fraud, he decided to commit another scam. This time he planned to make a fake lawyer ID card with his own photo. But this time, luck betrayed him, and his journey of freedom came to an end forever. Stephen went to a printing shop and asked the owner to make him a lawyer ID card. The shop owner became suspicious but still made the ID card for him. As soon as Stephen left the shop, the owner informed the Texas police and also faxed them the photo of the ID card he had made. When the police officer saw the ID card, he immediately recognized Stephen and informed Special Agent Terry. When Terry learned about Stephen, he was shocked. Until then, Terry believed Stephen was serving his 45-year sentence in prison. When he discovered the truth, he immediately contacted the jail authorities and asked them about Stephen. The jailer told Terry that Stephen had been diagnosed with AIDS a year ago, was released on parole, and had later died. Hearing this, Terry was stunned and realized that once again Stephen had fooled everyone and escaped prison. Terry quickly formed a team and started searching for Stephen again. Just a few weeks after faking his death, Stephen went to a bank in Dallas, where he told the bank manager that he was a millionaire and needed a loan of $1,000. He went inside and informed the authorities. Stephen realized that the bank manager suspected him and he could get caught. So to distract the people in the bank, he faked a heart attack and collapsed on the floor. The bank manager immediately called an ambulance, and Stephen was taken to the hospital. Since the bank manager had already informed the FBI about Stephen, 2 guards were stationed outside Stephen's hospital room until the FBI arrived. Once again, Stephen used his cunning trick. He told the hospital staff that he wanted to call his wife, but instead he used the phone in his room to call the hospital administration, pretending to be an FBI officer. He told them to release Stephen because they had already investigated him and found no suspicion. The hospital administration informed the FBI about the call they received from an FBI officer asking them to release Stephen. But the FBI officers were shocked because they had never made such a call. So who had called the hospital administration? Meanwhile, Terry also learned that Stephen was in Dallas, so he started searching for him in every hotel in the city. During his investigation, Terry found out that Stephen had been changing hotels frequently to hide. While investigating, Terry and his team questioned many people, and during this process, they reached an insurance company that had been in contact with Stephen. Stephen was planning to scam them as well, and he had faxed some documents to the company. By tracing this fax number, Terry found out the exact area of Dallas where Stephen was staying. With the help of the local police, Terry raided Stephen's house, but he wasn't there. As they were returning after the raid, One officer spotted Stephen on the road. They immediately surrounded him and arrested him. In this way, Stephen was caught by the police for the 6th time. Since Stephen had escaped prison so many times and caused great embarrassment to the court and the police, this time the court decided to give him the harshest punishment. The court sentenced Stephen to 144 years in prison, and also declared that he would never be granted bail again. Stephen was sent to the most dangerous prison in Texas, where murderers and terrorists were held. This prison was so strict that every prisoner had to spend 23 hours a day alone in their cell, and the remaining 1 hour could be used for exercise or cleaning. Stephen is still serving his sentence in that prison today, waiting for his death. This was the story of that cunning prisoner who managed to trick jailers, guards, and the police every time. But whether it was his bad luck or his foolishness, he was always caught in the end, and ultimately spent his entire life in prison. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comment. Like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.